Ladies and gentlemen, just when we thought we had seen it all, something huge has happened that is changing everything. The people who once seemed untouchable, the ones who always ignored justice, might finally be facing the consequences. Yes, you heard that right. Fulio's biggest enemies, the ones everyone thought were invincible, are now under the spotlight in ways we never thought possible. Could this be the moment everything changes? Could the balance of justice finally shift in Fulio's favor? Hold on, because what we are about to share will make you question everything you thought you knew. The people who once ruled the underground rap scene like powerful bosses are now seeing their world fall apart. What once seemed impossible to touch is now exposed for everyone to see. And this is not just a small mistake. This is a big change that is shaking the very foundation of their reputation. It all started when people began talking about something much worse than just rap beefs. For years, these individuals gained their fame by being aggressive and always in conflict with others. They were the ones showing off their wealth, showing their power, and controlling whole neighborhoods. From the outside, it looked like they could not be stopped. But under all of that, things were starting to crumble. Secret sources began sharing information that made things look much darker. There were rumors about money being moved in strange ways, secret meetings happening in dark places, and shady deals being made. It looked like their fancy lifestyles might not have come from honest work. People started saying that Fulio's enemies had been getting their money through bad deals, paying people off, and even using violence to take down anyone who got in their way. Even some of their biggest fans started to see that things were not as they seemed. One person, who wanted to stay unknown, talked about how this group would scare and control anyone who tried to stop them. The truth behind their story was darker than anyone had realized. They would show up in these fancy cars, the kind you usually see in movies. The source said it looked like something straight out of a gangster movie. But the truth was, they were not just showing off. They were sending a message: we run this town. And that message came at a high cost. Rumors started that their expensive lifestyle, from designer clothes to diamond chains to private jets, was paid for through shady deals. But no one dared to speak up about it because their reputation of being untouchable was too strong. Everything took a dramatic turn when a single event turned everything upside down. A video, posted online by an anonymous source, went viral and caused a massive stir. The footage, though unclear and blurry, seemed to show one of Fulio's enemies handing over a large envelope to a person believed to have ties to the criminal world. Just when people were still trying to make sense of the video, something even more shocking happened. A few days later, phone records were leaked, revealing links between the same group of people and a series of incidents that had, up until that point, seemed completely unrelated. What started out as a heated rap rivalry suddenly began to unravel into something much more sinister. The video and the leaked records created a huge shift in public opinion. The fans, who had once looked up to these figures in the rap world, now had their doubts. The more people dug into these leaks, the more it became clear that what was happening here was not just a battle over lyrics and fame. It was a much darker story involving shady deals, corruption, and criminal connections that no one had seen coming. What seemed like simple arguments in the public eye now appeared to be a cover for much deeper issues. For the longest time, the people involved had managed to stay out of the spotlight, avoiding any serious scrutiny. Their empire was built on fame, intimidation, and a reputation of being untouchable. They controlled the scene, flaunting their wealth and power, and no one dared challenge them. Fans adored them, and their enemies feared them. But all of that began to change with this one shocking video. The truth, it seemed, was finally starting to surface. As the video made its rounds online, more and more people began questioning everything they thought they knew about these figures. The blurry footage was hard to ignore, and once people started analyzing it, the connections to the criminal world became harder to dismiss. This wasn't just a rap feud anymore. It was something much bigger. The phone records that followed only added to the mounting evidence that there were connections to far more serious activities than anyone had imagined. The leak of the phone records revealed shocking ties to events that had been brushed aside as unrelated in the past. These records showed how certain individuals had been linked to incidents that, up until that point, seemed like coincidences or random events. But now, with the new information in hand, it became clear that these events were far from random. The dots were beginning to connect in ways that no one expected. What was even more unsettling was how the public reacted. Fans who had idolized these figures for years were suddenly feeling betrayed. The story they had bought into for so long was starting to fall apart. The people they had looked up to, who they thought could do no wrong, were now being exposed for their involvement in things far worse than they could have imagined. The public's perception shifted in an instant, and what was once a simple rap feud was now seen as a complex and dark web of deception, corruption, and criminal activity. It wasn't just the fans who were shocked. The media began picking up the story, and the narrative quickly changed. No longer was this just a clash between two rappers or a fight for dominance in the music industry. This was a full-scale scandal involving shady deals, secret meetings, and connections to the underworld. The video and the phone records had opened a door to something much darker, and now the world was watching as the truth slowly came out. As the scandal unfolded, more and more details began to emerge. People started to realize that this wasn't just about a video or a few phone calls. This was about years of manipulation, shady business practices, and a network of people who had been operating in the shadows, hiding their true activities from the public. What had once seemed like a group of powerful, untouchable figures was now looking like a house of cards ready to fall apart. The truth was coming to light, and there was no turning back. For those who had once looked up to these figures, it was a crushing blow. The people they had admired, the ones they had supported for so long, were now being revealed for what they really were. The music industry, which had once been their playground, now seemed like a place filled with lies, deceit, and corruption. Fans who had supported them felt deceived, and the rest of the world was now taking notice. What started out as a small, seemingly insignificant leak turned into a full-blown scandal. The video, followed by the phone records, exposed a web of secrets that had been hidden for years. What had seemed like a simple rivalry between rappers was now a much more complicated and dangerous situation. The people involved had built their reputations on power, fear, and control, but the truth was beginning to chip away at that foundation. The once untouchable figures were now facing a reckoning, and it was only a matter of time before the full extent of their actions would be revealed. As more evidence came to light, it became clear that this story was far from over. With each new leak and revelation, the public grew more and more shocked at what they were learning. The questions kept piling up, and the answers were nowhere to be found. What other secrets were these figures hiding? How deep did the conspiracy go? And perhaps most importantly, how much longer could they keep their empire from crumbling? The public's fascination with this story only grew as the scandal continued to unfold. People were glued to their screens, trying to piece together the puzzle of what had really been going on behind closed doors. What started as a simple video had turned into a massive story, one that would change the way people looked at the world of rap and the people who controlled it. And as the truth continued to emerge, there was no telling how much further this story would go. This is just the beginning. The full extent of what is happening is still unknown, but one thing is clear: nothing will ever be the same again. The truth has a way of coming out, and when it does, there is no going back. The world is watching, and the fallout is far from over. People's opinions began to change. These individuals, who once seemed untouchable, were now being exposed for something much worse. Social media exploded with people speculating about what was really going on. One post said, "They thought they could get away with this forever, but now the truth is out." As more details came to light, the media couldn't ignore it anymore. Headlines started to scream accusations of betrayal, lies, and deceit. Even news outlets began to cover it, with segments titled "The Fall of Fulio's Foes" and "How the Mighty Have Fallen." Reporters stood outside their mansions, waiting for a comment, but nothing came. Fans who had once looked up to them now felt betrayed. Social media was flooded with memes and hashtags calling out their actions. The very people who had once supported them were now demanding answers. It was not just the fans. Industry insiders started speaking up about things they had suspected for a long time but had never dared to say out loud. Meanwhile, Fulio's name kept coming up more and more. Even after his death, Fulio's name kept coming up in almost every conversation. His presence seemed to overshadow the entire situation. One comment summed it up: they built their empire on shady moves and lies, and now everything is coming to light. What made this even more interesting was the timing. Just as Fulio's enemies seemed to be on top, ruling the music charts and making headlines, these shocking details began to surface. The empire they built, based on fear, intimidation, and controversy, started to show signs of falling apart. These were not just small issues, they were signs of a bigger collapse. As more information came out, things looked even worse. There were rumors of their connections with certain law enforcement officials, talks of secret payments to keep their illegal activities hidden, and stories about paying rival groups to go away quietly. Each new piece of information made the situation seem bigger and more dangerous. What started as a simple scandal had turned into a major problem for them. Fulio's enemies had lived a life of luxury, but they had also lived dangerously. Now, the walls were closing in. The first signs of trouble were big, but that was only the beginning. As the days passed, more leaks came to light. Each one was worse than the last. This was not just a case of rumors, it was the start of everything falling apart. For years, they operated in the shadows, building an image of power and control. But now, the shadows were fading and the truth was being revealed. The first major shock came with financial records showing that Fulio's biggest rivals had been involved in questionable deals. These were not small-time deals. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars moving through fake companies, secret accounts, and shady businesses that seemed to exist only on paper. The leaked documents, published on a website known for exposing underground figures, showed that these transactions were not just for expensive items. They hinted at something much deeper. Something much darker was happening behind the scenes. There were whispers from anonymous sources whose names stayed hidden, but their stories were full of shocking details. They said there was a well-organized plan to keep control over the Jacksonville music scene. These sources claimed that money had been used to silence rival crews, bribe officials, and even pay off people who could cause trouble. One leak mentioned the phrase, "take care of," when talking about people who crossed them, which made everyone wonder, did it mean paying someone to stay quiet, or something much worse? Soon, audio recordings began to surface. These recordings, if they were real, showed conversations between Fulio's enemies and their friends. They painted a scary picture of a group that felt they were untouchable. In one of the recordings, a voice that seemed to belong to an important crew member laughed off the idea that they could be caught, saying, "What are they going to do? They cannot touch us. Everyone knows what time it is." Another recording showed someone talking about how to keep attention off them, mentioning vague donations that seemed a lot like bribes. Then, photos from a private party Fulio's enemies had thrown just weeks before the scandal broke were leaked. These pictures were not ordinary ones. They supposedly showed powerful figures hanging out with known criminals, people who were familiar to law enforcement. These photos made people start asking questions, especially when some of those same people later got caught up in other scandals. The situation got worse as old social media posts came back up. What used to look like harmless bragging now seemed really suspicious. Posts like, "making moves all day, every day," or "big business, small talk," now seemed to have a darker meaning. What was even worse were private messages that somehow became public. In these messages, members of the crew were talking about how to handle their problems and keep things quiet. Perhaps the biggest sign of their downfall came when their much-anticipated national tour was suddenly canceled. This tour was supposed to be a celebration of their success, but instead, it highlighted how far they had fallen. Promoters said the cancellation was due to safety concerns and unforeseen circumstances, but everyone knew the truth. The scandals made it impossible to continue. Venues did not want the bad attention, and fans were not buying tickets. What was once going to be the event of the year quickly turned into a ghost of what it could have been. They were left trying to recover financially and manage the damage. To make things even worse, former allies began to speak up. Producers, engineers, and even people who had worked closely with them started sharing their stories. While no one openly admitted to seeing crimes, their stories painted a picture of an environment filled with fear, manipulation, and distrust. One engineer remembered being kicked out of a recording session just for asking too many questions. They always had this feeling, he said, like they knew something was happening but did not want anyone else to find out. Another source, who had worked with them closely, spoke about the pressure and tension. It was clear that what had once seemed like unbeatable power was now falling apart. As the crew rose to fame, it quickly became clear that they used intimidation to keep people in line. If anyone crossed them, even in the smallest way, they would either be ignored or face worse consequences. People close to them said that while they worked hard to keep a good public image, behind the scenes, everything was about power and control. So, it was no surprise when all the secrets started to come out. The crew's legal issues soon began to grow. Their once impressive team of lawyers, who were known for being the best in the business, started to crack under the pressure. As public opinion turned against the crew, even the most experienced attorneys struggled to handle the situation. Press conferences that were supposed to reassure fans and business partners only made things worse. One lawyer's offhand comment about everyone making mistakes quickly went viral, and many people took it as a sign of guilt. Social media exploded with memes, mocking the crew's legal team as nothing more than people who could not find a way to defend their clients anymore. Then, the lawsuits began. The families of people who said they were harmed by the crew started filing for emotional distress, lost income, and even wrongful death. These lawsuits brought even more details to light. Depositions and sworn testimonies revealed names of people who had stayed in the shadows before, and both journalists and online investigators eagerly dug into their roles in the alleged operations. But the final blow came not from the courts, but from the culture. A popular filmmaker released a documentary telling the story of the crew's rise and fall. The film featured interviews with former friends, insiders from the music industry, and anonymous sources, showing just how reckless and arrogant the crew had become. The documentary went viral, getting millions of views in just a few days. It sparked reaction videos, think pieces, and heated debates online. The message was clear: these once untouchable figures had finally fallen, destroyed by their own arrogance. By the time the documentary was released and the final court cases were settled, the story of Fulio's enemies came to an end. They had built their empire on drama and chaos, becoming huge figures in the rap world. But when everything settled, all that was left were broken relationships, a ruined legacy, and a warning to others. Their fall showed that no matter how powerful someone seems, the truth will always come out, and when it does, there is no going back. So, what happens next? The lies, betrayals, and ambitions still leave many questions. Will those involved finally admit to what happened? Will true justice be done? One thing is certain: this story is not over, and we want to hear from you. Do you think the evidence is as solid as it looks, or is there still some doubt? Could there be more people involved in this story? Let us know in the comments below. This is your chance to share your thoughts on one of the biggest stories we have covered. If you're as interested as we are, do not miss our next deep dive into how this whole mess started. We will break down every step, analyze every leak, and explain it all to you in a way only we can. You will not want to miss it, so make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and hit that subscribe button for more exclusive stories and shocking revelations. Turn on your notifications so you never miss an update, because this story is far from over, and we're here to keep you informed every step of the way.